Hello, Valencia Etner. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am so well and so pleased to have you here with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. And I am going to shortly turn it over to you. But before I turn it over to you, tell us a little bit about your love and connection for the work of this great woman.
Oh, I was introduced to Zora Neale Hurston in my, I guess, late in undergrad
Hmm.
when I was the on the crew of a production of Spunk, which
Mhm.
is a play that is three of her stories put together with a blues singer and a blues guitarist, and really a very small cast that interchanges the roles of people
Hmm.
in her in her stories. And then in my graduate work, I was so intrigued by her in my English graduate work. She became my focus as I dealt with kind of a womanist uh, interpretation, literary uh, uh, arguments about her work, and ended up being my thesis. Uh, Information, what I used for my thesis for my English master's. And then as I continued to teach English, I introduced a whole 14 years of people in the rural to her work.
Hmm.
And so opened the eyes of those who are not of my hue to the work of Zora Neale Hurston, and uh, impressed upon them how it is universal. And so I've kind of been, Zora was died the year before I was born, but she's my friend. And so I've traveled to Eatonville to see her area where she grew up and all of that, and traveled to West Palm Beach to see her grave and all of those things. So yeah, I'm pretty much a Hurstonite.
Wonderful. I want to talk to you a little bit more about your master's thesis. I'm fascinated to hear a little bit more. Mahassan Pierce has joined us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. Brenda Nemox on Facebook. Thank you so much. I hope those of you that are joining and have joined, thank you that are on LinkedIn, YouTube events. Thank you so much. That's our overseas group most of the time, Mama V. So thank you all that are joining us across all platforms.
Yeah.
And chime in so that we can synthesize your comments, and you may have questions about this great Black figure, African American figure, and so we'll entertain a few of those as well. We're talking with Valencia Etner, who did her master's thesis. So what was your master thesis? I'm just interested to hear that.
It's called, there's a line in one of her stories that says, you got to know there to go there. You got to go there to know there. It's in Their Eyes Were Watching God, actually. And it talks, the thesis is the women in Their Eyes Were Watching God and in her stories as feminist characters, even though they're in a time where they really don't have any choices. It's how they make their internal choices in the midst of an oppressed situation that shows their feminist strength. And three major characters, Delia in Sweat, her story Sweat, Missy May in her story The Gilded Sixpence, and then Janie in Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. 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 So I'm going to yield it to you and let me know. I'll be sharing the screen for any information. I hope I did this in order. I'm trying to
get it. I'll adjust. So it's fine.
All right.
If you'll just throw the first one up, because I just want to show the many faces of Zora. And it's necessary to show that because she was a lot of different things. Zora Neale Hurston was born in Natagula, Alabama in 1891. And the family soon moved to Eatonville, Florida, which was a free you know, everyone was free, but it was an all Black municipality, which was unusual. They hadn't done much with it yet, but it was there was land given by Captain Eaton, who was the slave owner, gave the Blacks who worked for him a large amount of land and told them to go start a city, go start a town. And they did that. And so if you'll start showing those, I can just kind of work through them.
Okay.
She was a little girl when they moved to Eatonville. And subsequently, she's going to, if you ever look her up, you're going to see that she was born in 1904, and you're going to see that she was born in 1891. And so she was born in 1891, but she changed it to say 1901. She took 10 years off of her life purposefully as time went on, because when she was a little girl, her parents were married, Lucy and John Hurston. John Hurston was the preacher, and at one point was the pastor of the Macedonia Baptist Church in Eatonville, Florida. And but he was quite the womanizer. And so the mother died when she was 11, and he very swiftly remarried and shipped her off to Baltimore to be with her with family members. But Eatonville was her beloved place. So at every point in her life that she could go get regrounded in Eatonville, she would go back to Eatonville. One of the things about Hurston, and you know, we could be here all night, and I know we can't be. One thing about Hurston that I thought that I've always been really intrigued by is that she didn't really see herself as tragically Black, tragically colored, as she would call it. Growing up in Eatonville gave her a sense of self that she could not get being in a place where white people or any other ethnicity was in charge. She grew up in a town where Black people ran the town. Mm-hmm. So she didn't have the issues of that. These are the many faces of Hurston throughout her life, her literary side, her fun-loving side, a very young picture of her. And then the one with the cigarette in her hand is very late in her life. And Jump at the Sun is important for her life because her mother always told them to jump, to reach for the stars and jump at the sun. And even if you don't reach the stars, at least you got off the ground. And so she kind of kept that as her mantra. And if you can kind of see in that top right-hand corner, it's like she's in this coat, and you can kind of see her smile. She is, that's kind of that autobiography she wrote called it How It Feels to Be Colored Me. And she wrote this autobiography about how her sense of self is so strong because unless it was thrown up against a stark background of white, she never saw white. She never saw the differences, Black or white, unless there was a stark background, either because she was in a situation where she was made to feel less than, or if she was somewhere where she felt even stronger because there were, she talked about a jazz club and there were white people all around them, but they could not feel what she could feel. And so she felt the strength of her Blackness in, her coloredness, so to speak, in those times. So Hurston, you can go to the next one, Marcus. It doesn't matter which one. And so this is quintessential. My favorite picture of Hurston. This is quintessentially Zora, dressed to the nines, outside with everybody, and as you can see, being looked at all the time because she was a beautiful woman, but she was very sure of herself. This kind of takes the persona of Janie in Their Eyes Are Watching God from me with Hurston, because there's a lot of parallels between the life of Janie and the life of Hurston. If you see the one with her on the boat, I can go there to get the love in right now. Since we're loving stuff, I want to tell you that there's, Hurston was, like I said, she was 13 years old when she went to Baltimore. When she got ready to go to school, to college, she took 10 years off of her life because she was 34 when everybody else was in their 20s. and she did not want to be behind. So when Langston Hughes and all of that group of people that she came through with, Langston Hughes, Countee Cullen, Claude McKay, all of the Harlem Renaissance writers, she had taken 10 years off her age so she could kind of hang with them and be discovered as they were being discovered, as opposed to being older and seeming to be, past her time. So she did that, and she wrote. There was a lot of writing going on in Harlem, an awful lot of it. And so she was able to write and to be in the contest with all the others, and began to win the awards as this woman who was writing in dialect. And that was against the grain, because in this time, as African Americans, Negroes, coloreds, all of that spectrum of who we were, there was the need to write in a way that lifted the race. And because she was from Edenville, she wrote in the dialect of the people whom she grew up around. She used their names. You don't do that, but Hurston did. She used the real family names. And so she had a very bad rift with Richard Wright, who absolutely denounced her. W.B. Du Bois said that he didn't have any use for her because she didn't use her writing as propaganda to change things. And while she and Langston Hughes were friends, they fell out over a typewriter situation. Langston wanted to give a woman part of the royalties from something they were writing because she was their typist, and Zora said no, and they actually never, ever healed their rift. It's really kind of like literary folklore. Yes.
So I don't know which picture to bring up next. I'm just
reading the one on the boat.
The one in the
With
boat.
her and the guy in the boat.
I think this is, oh, okay.
Okay. This young man is Percival.
Huh?
And Percival McGuire, I think his last name is, I can't remember right now. Sorry, I think it's Putner or something, something real different. But this is Zora's young man. If you've ever read or watched Their Eyes Are Watching God, although the movie is not the book, please, if you've only seen the movie, please read the book. Anyway, but this was her younger man. He's almost 20 years her junior. But she had been married to Herbert Sheen, which was supposed to be the right marriage for her, and she was miserable. And so this young man is Percival, and she became involved. And she, I guess he thought they were 10 years apart, but they were really 20. And she was able to have this relationship, but he began to want to kind of close her in and box her in. Zora was a very free spirit, very, very free spirit. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't working. And so she had a Guggenheim Fellowship that took her to Haiti in 1936. And that's where she wrote Their Eyes Were Watching God, but it was about him. And because she had to deal with the pain of the breakup, because they had to break up. So the things that happened with Tea Cake and Janie in Their Eyes Were Watching God are really based on her love relationship with this man, with Percival.
Wow.
Yeah. People don't know a whole lot about that. So, it's kind of a fun fact.
Yeah.
Hurston said this in Their Eyes Were Watching God. She said, love is like the sea. It's a moving thing, and it's different with every shore it meets. And I guess given that her experiences, that was really true for her. Mm-hmm. That love was moving, and she never let it keep her in a box. She was kind of very free-spirited, free-flowing. But quite a lot of work. It all went into obscurity. Between her death, by the time she died, she didn't have a readership, and she did a lot of different things. People would just rediscover her, and she'd get a moment, and then she'd go back into obscurity. She died from hypertension. She had a stroke was in a rest home and nursing home, and died in 1960. In 1973, 4, Alice Walker rediscovered her work. She was buried in West Palm Beach and did not have a grave marker. Alice Walker made sure she had that grave marker. It's huge. So it was a wonderful, wonderful thing for Alice Walker to do in light of the circumstances of her death. So just to continue talking about Hurston for a little while, because it's such a wonderful story of her life. Not as tragic as some writers. She was able to write most of her life. If you will put up the writing, the one with the manuscript. She wrote Their Eyes Watching God in 7 weeks in Haiti, and she used these tablets. These are the original work, pictures of the original manuscript of Their Eyes Were Watching God. Her niece Lucy Hurston did a book. She didn't really want to do the book. I've had the opportunity to meet her and spend some time talking with her. And Lucy said when the publisher called her and asked her, would she do a book about her aunt, her aunt, because Lucy's father was Zora Neale Hurston's youngest brother. And the father was like 55 when he had Lucy. So older dad, and died early, but all of Zora's writings were in their attic. And Lucy tells the story of how she would go up there and read. She was an avid reader, exhaustive, and she had read everything in the local library that she thought she wanted to read. And so she started sneaking up to the attic, and she ended up ruining a bunch of first editions because she would bend the pages and they were old, and so they would break. But she read her aunt's writing, and so they asked her to do this book, and she was like, oh, I don't know. And so she came up with this outlandish idea that it would be a book of the story of Hurston, but with artifacts, copies of the artifacts, pop-ups, and of her writings. And so it's exactly what she did. And it's a wonderful, wonderful book. And I want to give you the title of it. I should have brought it out of the box that it's in, so you could have seen it. But it's quite an interesting book. And it has all of Hurston's information, and it's on Amazon. It's called Speak So You Can Speak Again. And it's the life of Zora Neale Hurston. And it is a marvelous, marvelous biographical display of the work of Hurston. Poems and stories and just little notes she left. They made copies of those and in the same kind of paper and put them in little pockets. Like, remember, children used to have pop-up books? So it was like that. And it's The Life of Zora Neale Hurston, written by Lucy Hurston. And so just to give you a little bit more, the stories of Hurston, and I just want to kind of encourage you to go read a story or two. They're all online, most of them. Sweat is one of my favorites. It's really an explanation kind of how African-American women used to deal with abuse. And it's interesting how Hurston challenges the status quo where abuse was okay. And then Gilded Six Bits, which is a fun-loving book, but also highlights what women were willing to do to honor their husbands or the love of their life. I'm just trying to think of things other than Their Eyes Are Watching God to talk about, because that is her pinnacle work, but she has so much more. Story in Harlem Slang, which is one of her later stories written in the 40s, written in the slang of Harlem with the quintessential pimps who were more like prostitutes then, and the women that they were trying to get to do things for them. If you can ever, the collected short stories of Zora Neale Hurston, I can. The collected short stories of Zora Neale Hurston is really a good thing to acquire. But I was just asked if I would read a excerpt, and my favorite excerpt to read is the opening of Their Eyes Were Watching God, because I feel like what Hurston does in that opening is really, in 1936, it seems like she really had her finger on the pulse of what is really how men and women see their lives. And so we're going to find that and just look and read that right quick. I know most of it by memory, but I don't want to mess it up. So let's read it. Okay. All right. Writing's a little small, but I think I can work it out. Yeah. Okay. There we go. So, Hurston begins Their Eyes Were Watching God by saying that ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. She says, for some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon until their dreams are mocked to death by time. I am having the hardest time finding this for real because I don't want to mess up her writing. It's too important to me, and I don't want anyone to think that I have done her an injustice, because I refuse to do that. Too important of a work for my life. And here it is. All right. Ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing until the watcher turns his eyes away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of men. Now, women forget all those things they don't want to remember, and remember everything they don't want to forget. The dream is the truth. Then they act and do things accordingly. So the beginning of this was a woman, and she had come back from burying the dead, not the dead of sick and ailing with friends at the pillow and feet. She had come back from the sodden and the bloated, the sudden dead, their eyes flung wide open in judgment. All the people saw her coming because it was sundown. The sun was gone, but it left its footprints in the sky. It was a time for sitting on the porches beside the road. It was a time to hear things and talk. These sitters had been tongueless, earless, eyeless conveniences all day long. Mules and other brutes had occupied their skins. Now the sun and the boss men were gone, so the skins felt powerful and human. They became lords of sounds and lesser things. They passed nations through their mouths. They sat in judgment. Seeing the woman as she was made them remember the envy they had stored up from other times. So they chewed up the back of their parts of their minds and swallowed with relish. They made burning statements out of questions and killing tools out of laughs. It was mass cruelty. A mood come alive, words walking without masters, walking all together like harmony in a song. What's she doing coming back here in them overalls? Can't she find no dress to put on? Where that blue satin dress she left here with? Where all that money her husband took and left her and died and left her? What that old 40-year-old woman doing with her hair swinging down her back like some young gal? Where she done left that young lad of a boy she went off here with, thought she was gonna marry. where he left her. What he done with all her money? Bet you off with some gal so young she ain't even got no hairs. Why don't she stay in her class? When she got to where they were, she turned her face on the banderlog and spoke. They grumbled a noisy good evening and left their mouths setting open and their ears full of hope. Her speech was pleasant enough, but she kept walking along the straight path to her gate. The porch couldn't talk for looking. Hurston wrote in dialect. And as I told my students, if you read that dialect in aloud, you'll hear that it's just Southern language, just the ethno language of the South. And it was learned on plantations. And until we were given the opportunity to have education, we spoke as we heard. And so therefore, the ethno language of the people in the South was often that they had heard others speaking. As we all know, originally that was not their language. So they came to learn English over time. So I hope that just that little snippet makes you want to go and read Hurston. As I said, most of her stories are online. I think you will be intrigued by her view of the South and her growing up in the South. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I want to revisit this great body of work and fascinating person, not just in Black History Month, right? I love the stuff to get into some of the literary writings of many great folks. And we're going to be inviting people to join us on that journey. So I hope that you done your thesis and that we'll come back and share a master moment. But I wanted to go to her website because there's something on her website I want to ask you about. I thought it was interesting to me. It looks like she moved to Eatonville, and on her website, it characterizes it this way: growing up in this culturally affirming setting in an 8-room house on 5 acres of land, Zora had a relatively happy childhood, despite frequent clashes with her preacher father, sometimes sought to quench her rambunctious spirit, she recalled. Her mother, on the other hand, urged young Zora and her 7 siblings to jump at the sun. Hurston explained, quote, "We might not land on the sun, but at least we will get off the ground," unquote. Hurston's idyllic childhood came to an abrupt end, though, when her mother died in 1904. Zora was only 13 years old. Quote, she says, "That hour began my wanderings," unquote, she later wrote. Quote, "Not so much in geography, but in time, then not so much in time as in spirit," unquote. After Lucy Hurston's death, Zora's father remarried quickly to a young woman whom the hot-headed Zora almost killed in a fist fight. And seemed to have little time or money for his children. So I wanted to ask you about that because she seemed like quite a feisty person, but you understand that preacher's granddaughter and preacher situation. How do you relate to her in having to grow up in the church? Because I think those that have grown up in the church and had father figures or fathers or grandfathers who, really tried to toe you to the line and you had this free spirit, I see that similarity. So how does that land on you? I thought that was so.
There's part of it that does and part of it that doesn't. Zora didn't have a lot of respect for her father. And consequently, she struggled with faith, which is why she delved into voodoo and all the other things that she found herself dealing with. Because it's important for me to say this. Zora was an anthropologist, not just a writer. So anthropology made her delve into the full bodiness of a people. Okay. And so I guess I relate to her free spiritness and her artisticness and trying to be put in a box that she couldn't be put in. But I, unlike her, was able to hold on to my faith, even with all that I saw, all that I've experienced, which is a whole nother workshop where the church is concerned, but was able to hold on to that and not let it go. But Hurston struggled. She struggled a lot with that. And it shows up in her work. Although the church shows up in her work, also the hypocrisy of church people shows up in her work.
Yeah, and I don't know if you read this, but one of the other pieces on the site that jumped out, I know you read an excerpt, and those that are tuning in, I'm talking with Valencia Etner, a staple in our Love and Stuff community, who, as you can tell, is very learned and very well bred in Zora Neale Hurston, among many other things. But you talked about her way with language. I'm wondering if she was like a early social anthropologist as it relates to Black people, but that's a whole nother discussion. But I like this part of something I read, because she just seemed to have this way with these words. The men noticed her firm buttocks like she had and her hip pockets.
Yes, like
great black hair swinging to her waist and unraveled in the wind like a plum or plume. Then her pugnacious breast tried to be o'er holes in her shirt. So I love the command that she uses of language. She really nails it. I think we have contemporaries in our day who mimic that style, or who are from that tradition of really using the dialect.
Walker, not using the dialect, but using more, not so much the dialect, but the culture, the setting, the use of language. Walker, Alice Walker is in that tradition. And so she's probably the closest in that tradition that I know of. Color Purple is very much Hurston-like in its composition. So yeah. She had a way, an amazing way with words. When you read her, that she's got like some things that she will say, like that whole thing up there with the women, and bet he's ran off with some woman that don't even have no hairs yet, meaning somebody who's too young to have developed. She always has some kind of colloquial thing that she says. Like her friend Phoebe, who comes next kind of in the first chapter. She says, I don't care what you tell them, Phoebe, because my tongue is in my friend's mouth. And that's not a graphic. That's saying that whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm saying, you're my friend. And so I'm giving you permission to speak as I would speak. So there's all of these colloquial things that you come to know as you continue to read Hurston.
Yeah. One more question before we close out, and thank you so much. There is, or it might be a couple questions, I don't know. Fascinating writer, and one of her works, The Barracoon, the story of the last Black cargo.
Yes.
So I thought that is a story. I'm interested in seeing someone do some screenplays or work with that story. I'm reading just a little bit again from her site. 1927, she went to Plateau, Alabama, just outside of Mobile, to interview 86-year-old Cudjo Lewis. Millions of men, women, and children transported from Africa to America as slaves. Cudjo was the only person alive to tell the story of this integral part of the nation's history. Hurston was there to record Cudjo's first-hand account of the raid that led to his capture and bondage 50 years after the Atlantic slave trade was outlawed in the U.S. Wow, what a powerful read that must be.
Yeah,
maybe to take it to stage. What do you think about that?
I am almost finished reading that. I've been in and out. Zora was an anthropologist, so she was never going to be apologetic for telling the real story. So when she talks to Cudjo, she is getting from him the real of things.
Got it.
Okay? The real of it. And even if it feels like it's fantastical, it's not. Okay. You know, a lot of things it talks about, because in 1927, and so he was 80 something, which means that he was definitely a slave, because slavery had only been over 60 years,
right,
by 62 years by 1927. And so he was obviously in his 20s, which means he was born a slave and grew up and was working as a slave. And so he was able to share with her some of those things that we get the narrative of Frederick Douglass and the narrative of Jacobs, the woman, Jacobs, Sarah Jacobs. But we get those from the perspective of someone who published them that was not Black.
Mm-hmm.
This narrative we get from Hurston,
mm-hmm.
who was able to speak to him and to hear his story and to relate to his plight.
Yes.
And so it was good. He knew his background. He knew where he came from. He knew all of that, what he did coming through Reconstruction, all of that.
Yes.
So.
Thank you, Valencia Etner. This has been a Black History Moment in our Black History Month celebration. All month long, we're going to be highlighting the accomplishments, the sacrifice, the footsteps of Black people in the American experience and people of African and African-American descent. Thank you, Valencia Etner, who is an aficionado, as you can tell, of Zora Neale Hurston, and we'll be bringing more back into our community. I hope you will share this widely and join us tomorrow as LaShawn Phoenix Coteran joins us with a little bit more poetry. You'll have to join tomorrow and see exactly what that will be. And we will continue this journey every day at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us Sunday, Valentine's Day at 4:00. There's love in the air, and you want to join us for a Valentine's celebration. You might win some great prizes, watch some great movie shorts, and enjoy just some great, fantastic camaraderie and fellowship. And who knows, there might be love in the air, but you will go to the Love and Stuff page and join us there and get your ticket for that event. It is a ticketed event. And then on the 28th, Valencia Etner and many others will be back with us as we close out this month's celebration on the 28th. We are just excited for the celebration. We're 365 Black, but we celebrate all of the hues within the Love and Stuff community. But it's important that as we look at our diverse world community, that we understand the unique contributions of the African American experience that make our nation great. I know people say make it great again, but I want you to take a look through some darker lenses just to know how great we are from the African American collective. Thank you, Valencia Etner. Join us in just less than an hour right here on Love and Stuff. You do not want to miss the results of our 36 questions that lead to love. You don't want to miss this. You want to be back with Valencia, me and the crew, and it will be, I can't even tell you what it'll be because I'm ready to get there. See you very shortly. Share this content widely. Follow us on the Love and Stuff page. It's a wonderful community. Thank you.